Welcome to Political Trade Secrets, an inside look at campaigns and politics, where we pull back the curtain, look under the hood, and investigate all aspects of politics and how elections are won. Now, here's your host, Dustin Olson.
Welcome to Political Trade Secrets. I'm Dustin Olson, and I'm really excited to have everybody joining us today. We have a great show in store for everybody. I'm joined by my co-host, Sean Bartley. We are partners in Olson Strategies, and we are going to be talking with a great friend of ours, the filmmaker and Republican ad man, Jason Meath. And we've mentioned him a couple times on this show, and we've spoken with his business partner. And we're really excited because tonight on Newsmax, they're going to be premiering Bad Decisions, the Joe Biden story. So we're going to talk to Jason about that. He's the writer and producer, director, and we're going to talk about filmmaking and how that pertains to ad making and everything else. It'll be a fun conversation and get to know Joe Biden a little bit better. But Sean, how you doing today?
Doing great. Good morning, everyone. It's a nice day here in Ohio, and hope everybody else is having a great morning so far. And just looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah. Well, yesterday we were talking about how how the Supreme Court nomination hearings were going. It was pretty boring up to that point, but it got, I don't know if it got interesting. It got horrible.
It did not go.
Kamala Harris made another appearance in the screeching across the blackboard area, so that was interesting.
Yeah, it was an interesting day. Senator Whitehouse spent his 30 minutes, didn't ask one question. In 30 minutes.
It was fun watching him with all of his visual aids, and he dropped it on the ground once, and I made a comment that a lot of folks liked, which was, I imagine he was quite the kindergartner. I imagine that show and tell went on forever, and I just can't imagine that guy.
Yeah.
But,
it was something else. And then Mazie Hirono was, of course, herself. She played herself in the hearings where I think she got the wrong script because she asked if there was any if she had conducted any sexual assaults or anything like that. I was like, I think you're at the wrong hearing.
You would think that if she was saying that, she would have. There had to have been a moment where she's like, "I can't believe I'm about to say this." But self-awareness is not something that seems to be present with some of those senators.
Well, it was though somebody put the questions in front of them, and they were just supposed to read them no matter what. Like they had no clue it was coming. Amy Klobuchar asked a question that she didn't even know what it meant when asked for further clarification. Basically, it was just give me an answer because I can't clarify. Got it.
Or don't. It doesn't really matter to them. Well, if you're joining us, we're live across the internet on different platforms. If you're on Facebook, if you're on Twitter, if you're on Periscope, wherever you're at and you're watching us, YouTube, please post any questions. We're going to be talking with Jason Meath here in a moment, and Jason is a great Republican media consultant, and we've used him numerous times for television commercials. He's extremely talented and creative, and people will want to hear about his new movie that he's produced that's going to be airing on Newsmax tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and encourage everybody to check that out. Before we bring him in, we're going to preview it, watch the trailer, and that's going to be interesting. I'm really looking forward to finding out what Jason learned about Joe Biden going through this process, because as we talk about as strategists, you really want to get to know your opponent, like get to know them at a deep level such that you can actually kind of understand like the decisions that they would make. And clearly, based on the title, Jason's gotten a good sense of the bad decisions that Joe Biden has made, because that's the title of the movie. Bad Decisions, the Joe Biden story. So we're going to be going there in a second, but post questions, anything you have, feel free to post those. Those all come to us and we get those. You can also hit us up on Twitter. I'm Dustin Olson, at Dustin Olson on Twitter. That's OLSON. And then for Sean Bartley, you can find him on Twitter at Sean, SEAN _Bartley. And that's how you can get a hold of him and tweet us with questions. And if you're listening on one of the podcasting platforms, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, please do leave a review and a rating and reach out to us on our Twitter. And we will love to hear from you. So with that, let's hear about our sponsors. If you'd like to tell us about Grassfire and 10-cent texting.
Yeah. So Grassfire, this is the time of year, we've talked about it quite a bit, where you are trying to reach the voters that you need to get to most. Grassfire can help. Canvassing, so you're door-to-door, right there at your doorstep, safely and with confidence that your message is getting through. Petitioning, actually getting your issue on the ballot. And that's something, especially as we get beyond the election here, is going to be so critical. Paid live calling, so actually having a conversation between with a professional and the voters out there, and hearing more about you and where you stand, and making sure they're getting out to vote and have a plan to vote. And then through 10-cent texting, fueled by Grassfire, and 10centtexting.com. That's where you can actually connect with people right there on their phone, and get a message out to them. Make sure that they, with links to where to go vote and all that information that they need right now. As a few more states are sending their ballots even today, this is a great opportunity to make sure that you're getting to them right.
It really is amazing how quickly people respond and how grateful they are to the information when they get it. A lot of people are confused with all the rules changing. People really like that quick. As voting is opening up, they can get information from your campaign and get it done quickly. If you're doing it through a volunteer peer-to-peer, that's great. By the way, you can go to 10centtexting.com and you can download the book, 8 Pro Tips for Political Texting, whether you're doing the volunteer peer-to-peer texting or you're doing a full-service mass texting like 10centtexting.com. Great resource for everybody. So with that, I would like to preview Bad Decisions, the Joe Biden story, and then we'll talk to Jason.
Love it.
Here we go.
Nearly a half-century at the very top of American politics. Along the way, he became known for some of the worst decisions.
Apologize for what?
And most notorious gaffes ever made in Washington.
A man I'm proud to call my friend. A man who will be the next president of the United States, Barack America.
And it happens to be, as Barack says, a 3-letter word, jobs. J-O-B-S, jobs.
His mom lived in Long Island for 10 years or so. God rest her soul. And although your mom's still alive as your dad passed. God bless her soul.
But behind the blunder lies a troubling track record. Even leading Obama officials have said he is wrong on nearly every major foreign policy and national security issue over the past 4 decades.
Mr. President, my suggestion is don't go.
His legislative legacy, called a disaster.
And I'd say lock the SOBs up. We do everything but hang people for jaywalking in this bill.
A habit of injecting race into politics, often with groan-worthy results.
The largest growth in population is Indian Americans. You cannot go to a 7-Eleven or a Dunkin' Donuts unless you have a slight Indian accent. I'm not joking.
Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
wealthy kids, black kids, Asian kids.
But what about the speeches and policy decisions he has made along the way? Who is the man behind the politician? This is the story of the Joe you need to know. After all, he wants to be your next president.
Wow, I had some laugh out loud moments there. So welcome, Jason Meath. It's great to have you on the show. We appreciate your great work. We have worked with you for the last several years, and my favorite, I tell people this all the time, my favorite video that we produced for the 2016 Republican National Convention was the Hillary movie that you produced. I mean, the production value is always excellent for anything that you do, but that was similar to what we just saw. It's just cringeworthy, some of the stuff that when you really look into these candidates. And with that, I'd like to ask you, how did you come up with the idea of doing this film, and when did you start the process? And tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, thanks, Dustin. It's great to be on the show. And I've been wanting to come on for a while, so I'm glad we had this great excuse to be able to talk about the film. The film started during the summer, when it became sort of very clear that Biden was going to be the nominee, and we really my question was, what has he been doing for 50 years? I mean, he became one of the youngest senators ever elected to the Senate in 1973. So we have a very long track record to look at, and I haven't really heard much about his decision-making process, his policy positions, or anything else for that matter of his long career. There's a lot of focus on what he has been saying and doing recently. I think Kamala Harris and Senator Booker, they both brought up some issues about his busing back in the 70s and 80s in terms of opposing the integration of public schools, which I think would have raised, which probably raised a few eyebrows in his own party. Yeah. But that's about it. We really hadn't heard about so many other things in his long legislative career. So we wanted to kind of go back and research that and bring it all sort of to light, and do it in his own words by using clips of his own speeches and his own testimonies and his own Senate hearings to be able to kind of shed light on this guy who's running for, president. Yeah.
Well, I'm curious, as you went through that process, there's probably very few people besides you and maybe a handful of other people who, going through all that footage and everything that you would have done to put this together, what did you learn about Joe Biden? I'm sure you started to get a sense for who he actually is as a person. It's probably changed over time, but what did you learn about him?
I learned that he's not at all the same person as he used to be. Yeah. He was always sort of, kind of had this moniker as the middle class Joe, a lunch bucket Joe. He was relatively moderate in many positions through his career, which you can't even recognize his old positions versus his new positions. It shows you how the left has completely dominated his way of thinking and his positions as running for president. I mean, I'll just give you an example. On abortion, he was a big supporter of the Hyde Amendment, which for years, it's always protected taxpayer-funded abortions. And he threw that out the window this summer and said he's not supporting it anymore, and he's completely abandoned his relatively moderate stance on abortion. And even the Washington Post wrote a column basically on this shift on abortion and so many other areas, climate change and many other areas. They basically said that at this rate, Joe Biden will be a socialist by Labor Day. That was their words.
Absolutely.
That is a great point, and that's one of the things. I actually saw it in the trailer there. The around the crime bill, which, to my knowledge, really is his landmark achievement in the Senate, and he's all but abandoned it now, and basically said, "Yeah, it was terrible."
That's right. He was the point person on the crime bill and the crime legislation, Clinton's crime bill back in the 1990s. Basically what he supported and what he advocated was mass incarceration for even minor drug offenders. And essentially it destroyed the African American community. It jailed hundreds of thousands of people on relatively minor offenses. And he boasts in the documentary, we have him boasting about how it wouldn't even, it's not just jail time, but he made it possible to seize just about every single thing of any kind of means that these people had, including their property, including their homes, including their possessions, really destroyed and decimated these people.
Which really then made it impossible for them to reintegrate into society after they'd served their time.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. And including, and he even takes it a step further in advocating for legislation to enforce the death penalty on drug users and drug traffickers. So he was, you could call it today, rather radical in this sense in devastating the African American communities.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and thank you. And I'm looking forward to that part of it tonight when I watch on Newsmax, because I do think that is something that seems to go untold here, that it kind of got touched on in the primaries with him. But after that, I mean, basically a free pass on not just this. You mentioned the other issues. It's really, really amazing.
Yeah,
to see that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's worth taking a look at all of this, especially now that he is essentially calling to diverting money away from police. I mean, this was the absolute opposite of what he spent his entire career doing, and now he's kind of trying to jump into the bandwagon of the defund the police crowd without actually trying, without saying it point blank. He has called to divert resources away from police departments. So this is not even the same man that had been serving in the Senate and as vice president for so long.
Let me ask, is it that he's not the same man, or it's different positions? Because it seems like there might be a common thread in all that. It's a cravenness, is how Sean talks about it. That there's a certain, like, whatever is happening, whatever might help him get a little bit further, whatever it is of the moment, he's all for that.
No question about it. I mean, look at where we were in the 1990s. People were very concerned with crime. People were very concerned with massive drug infiltration into communities and inner cities and even schools. So, he went radically in the other direction to sort of jump on the popular sentiment at the time. The same thing could be said today, and it's really only to preserve his power, only to preserve his being able to go to the next level in politics. It's very self-serving. We see that self-servedness as well in the China and Ukraine sagas. We didn't even, I would have loved to have put the new information that came out today in the New York Post that cements the fact that he was in on the entire Hunter Biden Ukraine Burisma scandal, even though he's said multiple times and swore that he had absolutely no knowledge. Now we see emails and evidence that he not only had knowledge, but he met with all of these people to conspire to get rid of this prosecutor in the Ukraine who was investigating the company that was paying his son $50,000 a month. So we do include that in there, as well as China, and China also extremely disturbing amounts of money that have flowed into the Penn Biden Center at the University of Pennsylvania. basically the Biden Center at the University of Pennsylvania has been secretly bankrolled by the Chinese, and I'm not even sure how secretly it is, because these expenditures are all very much out there for anybody who wants to take a look at the tens of millions of dollars that have flowed into the Biden Center from Chinese.
So, something that I've noticed in the last few weeks with everything that's been going on the campaign trail and in the news, China has started to fade a little bit as a topic. But what you're telling us is that we need to bring this back and really focus on it, and people really need to know the truth, because clearly there is a problem here. What do you think the impact would be if Biden were president and in our relations with China?
I tell you, I think it would be very sad. He was right there in lockstep supporting every single lenient measure on China as they siphoned away millions of American jobs and decimated American communities, industrial communities, blue collar communities, and sucked away all those jobs to China. Those were all made possible by policies from Joe Biden. He assured everyone that a strong China was in the best interests of the United States. We have him in the documentary saying a strong China, a vibrant China, an economically vibrant China is beneficial to the people of the United States. Well, that's just false. And we've learned the hard way. We've learned lessons the hard way. And now that President Trump is finally, it looks like he's finally bringing back those manufacturing jobs. He's finally getting corporations to realize that doing business in the United States is in their best interests. We're finally changing attitudes that way. I just think it would be completely devastating to go back to the old policies where, we've sacrificed our industry at the hands of China.
Well, China is, even last year, Joe Biden said China's not a threat.
Right.
And
they're not bad folks.
Yeah. You got nothing to worry about. I mean, if he had been to Scranton in the last 70 years, he might know that what it's doing to communities like that all across the country, and not just that, the intellectual property and the stealing of that, it's that it isn't talked about anymore, and I think part of it is China's ability to curry favor and influence with folks like Biden, and then the media and sports. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's exactly right. In his official duties as Vice President of the United States, he literally would fly in on Air Force Two. Since he's the Vice President, it's Air Force Two. He'd land in China. He would come out first. Hunter Biden would come out second. There would be a car for Biden waiting to take him to his official duties. And there would be a car for Hunter Biden waiting to take him to the Bank of China to secure his own personal business dealings of tens of millions of dollars of investment. So, again, I mean, it's crazy that this isn't being talked about more. It's raw self-interest on the behalf of the vice president and his family, who are clearly profiting from his duties as Vice President of the United States.
This is a good transition. We have a question from Mike. He says, how can conservative filmmakers make more conservative films? And what Sean just mentioned, he's talking about, NBA and really Hollywood. And you have an interesting, your background's very interesting. You wrote the book, the Hollywood on the Potomac, right?
Yes.
And people should check that out. By the way, how can people check that out?
You can get it on Amazon. Hollywood on the Potomac. It includes over 200 photographs that I researched at about 9 different presidential libraries, and documenting kind of what are the story behind all of the photographs of famous celebrities, musicians, sports stars, filmmakers, actors, actresses who have sort of had this love affair with Washington. It's a bipartisan book. It doesn't discriminate between Democrats or Republicans. Stars they crave fame, and politicians actually stars crave power and politicians crave fame. And one of them has one thing and one of them has the other, and they both want what each other has. And it's always been like that. And so I think it's indicative of the meshing between Hollywood and Washington, which I think, you just look in the White House and see a reality TV star as United States president today. One of Hollywood's biggest actors was, president in the 80s. So there's always been a sort of mutual admiration society on behalf of those two worlds.
And with the conversation with China's getting more power in our country in the political sphere, but then also Hollywood. And going back to Mike's question, how does a conservative filmmaker go about making conservative films? It's always been difficult, but as China becomes more powerful and is starting to take over, Hollywood and media decisions, and it seems like media are now starting to make editorial script decisions. The NBA seems to be playing to a Chinese audience. What are we to do? And clearly, Biden would not be a great president. Otherwise, we're going to be getting propaganda from China.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, it's both entertainment and sports, unfortunately, and probably a lot of other areas we haven't even spotted yet. I often kind of joke that if I really wanted to make some good money, I would not be a conservative filmmaker. I would, I'd actually probably be the opposite, and I'd have multiple Netflix deals under, Obama's giant Netflix contract that he signed. So I think, but I couldn't do that. There's no way I could make a non-conservative film about politics. It just would be so disingenuous as a documentary filmmaker to me to be able to do that. I don't have that power in me. I think that basically to be successful at it, you've got to have the drive. You've got to have the fortitude of knowledge and thought that this is the right thing to do. This is the right message to get across in a world that increasingly needs a different perspective. We have a media that is so one-track minded and one-sided that it's sad. It's actually, they're catering to an audience of, maybe less than 50% of America. That's ABC, CBS, NBC, all of them are catering to that side of America, and they're going there to get their sort of propaganda. I think there has to be a balance on the other side. And I don't mean, equal propaganda. I just mean a different perspective.
Yeah.
So that's what I try to do in all of my pieces, is to give a different perspective and let people make up their own minds. Don't shove it down their throat. Let them get the facts and make up their own minds, kind of like what we used to do when we watched the news back 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah. It's so interesting. If you're a conservative in America, you are served up all sorts of opinions on the left. Like if you watch any TV show on any given night, there will be a subplot line that's going to present some kind of liberal perspective. And as conservatives, we just kind of go, okay, whatever, we get it. This is just, we actually are probably benefited by it because we have a conservative point of view. We also see the liberal point of view. We actually have a larger view of the world. And if you are a liberal, you are not going to ever see another perspective, which makes it really easy to hate the other side because you have no understanding of them. I think it's a really big danger. And I think the work that you're doing in promoting conservative filmmaking and creating and really bringing your creativity, it's something I want to talk about it real quick. And I know that you have other interviews today, but you also are a Republican ad maker. We've used you for a number of races, and you always provide us with amazing material, amazing content, and we really appreciate that. And you're always a great collaborator. So, talk a little bit about the I guess the juxtaposition, how you bring that filmmaking into the ad making, and then how people can go to you and hire you to help them with their ads.
Well, I appreciate the nice words, Dustin. I came to Washington and was a political consultant for a number of years, and I had my background was in filmmaking. I went to film school, and it was in fictional filmmaking. I mean, more of the sort of entertainment side. And one thing I noticed about creative people, no matter who they are in the creative process, is that if they're just stuck doing one thing all the time, it starts to become rather monotonous, and you start doing sort of a factory level approach to what you're putting out. Your output is the same output every single cycle, every single year for every single candidate. And that gets nobody anywhere, because when you see these ads, you gloss over them. And I mean, half the ads that I see on television, I don't even know what they're trying to tell me, or who I'm supposed to vote for, and who I'm supposed to dislike, and who I'm supposed to like. It starts to get very muddy. So in sort of separating the worlds of filmmaking and ad making, I didn't really think there needed to be too much of a wall there creatively. I feel like when I go out and make a film, me and the people that work with me on my team, the other creatives who really do the real, nice creative work, they explore and they learn and they see what the trends are, and they see what kind of things can be done, and they push the envelope a little bit with the filmmaking, and then they bring those sort of ideas into the ads when we then go and work on ad work. So I actually think that it benefits everybody, including the clients. In the end, when you're not a one-trick pony doing the same thing all the time. Do a little television, it's all television, it's all movies, it's all video, it's all digital, it's all, do a little, TV work here, do a little ad work here, do a little, and diversify a little bit. That's what we try to do, so that we can kind of, give a little bit extra into the final product at the end, maybe make a difference.
And what is that extra? What is it that you see might be missing in a lot of Republican ads? What's an element that you are able to, by tearing down that wall between the two, that you bring into it?
Well, there's been so many times, in the process of ad making, and I call it death by PowerPoint. It's, Republicans are very guilty of this. I don't think Democrats quite so much. Yeah, I mean, you get these great, what's the matter with a little emotion? What's the matter with a little, don't be so worried about putting every little statistic on screen, every little endorsement, every little policy position that seemed to show up in a poll somewhere that that's going to be, it's got to be in there along with these 5 others, and you got 30 seconds to do it. Sometimes that's not the right answer. And so I think what really is important for Republicans is to kind of get back into the storytelling, the human side of it. Why should I care about you? I understand what you believe. I think we're living in an age now where if you run as a Republican, people pretty much already know what you believe. If you're running as a Democrat, they're going to assume that you believe what, in X, Y, and Z. If you're running as a Republican, they're going to say, okay, now they need to have a reason why they like you, why they want to see your face on television and put you into office to represent them. Why emotionally should they be connected to you? Because if they make that connection, they're going to be far likelier to go out and vote for you as that person, rather than, an issue here, an issue there. Issues are important, don't get me wrong, but I think that making a connection to somebody is so much more powerful these days, than really what I say death by PowerPoint. Okay, we got this poll back. Let's stick all this stuff into 30 seconds and in the kitchen sink and stick it on television.
Yeah, and people can't remember any of that anyway.
Exactly.
Right.
But your point to really tapping into a little more emotion is something that the president does very well.
Yeah.
And it's been jarring for some Republicans who are used to just doing the same old, we got to get out this laundry list of endorsements, and then, that's good enough. And in some places, it may still be, but
you're absolutely right. The president is the first one that came along and said things that you're not supposed to say, and took on people that you're not supposed to take on. And people, I can't tell you how many people from 2015, 2016, ever since, said, I've always thought that way, but I just never heard anybody say it, so I never said anything about it. Or, that does bother me. Like, I can't stand PC culture, and everything that it does to my life. And finally, somebody's out there talking about it. Nobody ever talked about it. I can guarantee you. I mean, look, I love Ted Cruz, but if Ted Cruz were, was the guy running in 2016, I'm just not sure how much of this stuff we would have ever talked about.
Yep.
And so Trump makes that connection to people saying, God, you know what? I've thought that same way about that. He does it on a lot of stuff. I don't know how he is so in touch with the average American. It's funny because they try to get him on being a rich, New Yorker, and he's anything but that in his ability to connect to the average voter, especially during these rallies and whatnot.
Yeah. We, as you know, when we first worked together, it was on the 2016 convention. And it was in that convention when then candidate Trump did his walkthrough for the stage before his speech. And it was so fascinating to watch him. He made sure that he acknowledged every single person on that stage. Most of them are union workers. They're getting the stage ready for the night and everything else. And he even looked around corners to the backstage to find the stage sweepers, and wanted to make sure that he was it was like he had a radar for it. He was in tune, and he knew how to really connect with everybody on that stage. And it was pretty amazing to watch that process.
Well, it's why, the rallies are such a big part of his strategy. And I can't, the polls are the polls. But when you see a rally of 17,000 people in not a very populous area, Sanford, Florida, or Johnstown, Pennsylvania, and whatnot, the places are packed to the gills. People are coming from miles and miles, sometimes other states. They're crossing state lines to see this man. And you look at that, and then you see what Joe Biden is doing, going out there, a room. I don't know if they're doing it for the social distancing or if but there's 9 people.
I think they want to tell us that we're in a dystopia. I think that's what they're trying to.
And
I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone when I look at that. It doesn't have anything to do with connecting to a voter on any level other than what you say. I don't know if it's fear, or they're trying to instill fear in people, or what they're trying to do. Certainly you would think that more than 9 people would like to come out and stand in a room, even at 6 feet apart, and see Joe Biden. But it doesn't seem like there's a lot of enthusiasm on that side.
Well, agreed wholeheartedly. And just 2 points to that. One is that Joe Biden certainly isn't running on hope and change anymore, is he? And second is I live in Ohio. The vice president was in Toledo. There were more Trump supporters there at his event than Biden supporters. He was getting heckled a bit because he had it outside. It was not only outside, but then they've got the circles so that how far 6 feet is. Just over the top craziness when it comes to all this. I saw him in a double mask the other day. So,
Yeah.
it's just like, come on.
It surprised me and they can say safety and all this kind of stuff, but I kind of have to call a little garbage on that, because Kamala Harris, all she could talk about was how, unsafe having a hearing for a Supreme Court justice was. So she was going to have to stay home. Well, she didn't stay home. She's in her office, Skyping down the hall into the hearing room. And then there's video of her. I don't know if you saw the video of her walking with about 10 other people into a crowded elevator, and the elevator door's shut, and there's not an inch more space for anybody to get in there. So she's obviously not worried about keeping any kind of social distancing. So it's garbage. I mean, it's like when Biden was on the town hall with Anderson Cooper on CNN about a month or so ago, and they didn't realize that the cameras were still on them because they were cutting to commercial, and they took a big wide shot. And they had been standing something like about one side of the stage. Biden was standing and Anderson was standing on the other side, and everybody was in their little circles. And, as soon as the cameras cut, Biden went over and hugged Anderson Cooper and started whispering in his ear with no mask. So,
he probably got a sniff too.
I think it's so disingenuous.
Well, so coming back to the Biden documentary, Bad Decisions, a Biden story, airing tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on Newsmax. Are we going to see all that creepy footage of Biden sniffing people and everything else?
We do not show that. I think that is something that people know about him. We really wanted to maintain somewhat of an even keel towards the documentary. And even on the topics that we call him out for in terms of bad decisions, we make it a point to also show his rebuttal about what how he has explained himself over the years on various matters. And like I said, let the audience decide. I will say that having gone through so much footage, decades and decades of footage, we did put a piece in at the end about his cognitive slippages and his cognitive fitness as of late. It is astonishing to see video even of him a year ago or 2 years ago, much less decades ago, and see that there's something seriously happening to this man, and that should be something that should be concerning to any voter, and they should make up their own minds as to whether they think that he's mentally fit for the office.
Yeah, it's truly sad, honestly, and it's sad that his party would put him up for that and put him into that position. But maybe they have other plans. An easy replacement.
Again, I think it's power at all costs. That's almost their approach to everything. It's their approach to legislation. It's why Nancy Pelosi spent nothing but 4 years investigating Trump and did nothing as far in terms of any kind of social policy or getting any type of really meaningful legislation pushed through the House. All they've done is sat there and investigated and slandered and done everything else they possibly can to overthrow a duly elected president. It's win at any cost, power at any cost.
Well, and just having seen, sorry, a brief question here, just having seen the cravenness of Joe Biden through this, and then what could happen next year should he become president, matching up against the cravenness of Nancy Pelosi and Kamala Harris. I mean, what do you see might be the fallout from that? I mean, I can't imagine Joe Biden going through all this and then saying, "Okay, here you go. Here are the keys to the car."
Yeah.
No, he doesn't have. I'm sure he has no intention of doing that. And I think the evidence is when you see the sort of the Biden Incorporated, the family of Joe Biden, and what they did under 8 years of the Obama administration, wheeling and dealing all over the world. We saw a little bit of, I mean, it's sort of reminiscent of the Clinton Foundation and what we saw there. The Clintons at least had the common sense to organize a foundation. He didn't even do that. I mean, contracts were flying this way and that, and Hunter Biden was introducing people to his father and from Ukraine and firing prosecutors that were investigating wrongdoing and covering things up. And it seems like Joe Biden was in on it. So I think that's his modus operandi. And I think you could expect a lot more of that for 4 years under a Biden presidency.
Yeah. It's the conversation going to the old man and asking for the keys to the car. The old man's not going to give them over easily.
No.
And there's clearly there's a fight within the party about that.
I think that, I think that there's clearly some issues happening with him, but I do not believe, I think he's still in charge enough that he's going to want to probably be in charge. Yeah.
Well, so if people want to watch the documentary, it's premiering tonight on Newsmax, and people should check that out in their local cable. And that's going to be at 9 p.m. Eastern time. And is it going to be airing several times there, or is it going to be available elsewhere?
Yeah, I'm sure that this will be the first time it's seen tonight, but I'm sure it'll be airing all throughout the month of October. If you just check your local listings, you'll probably see it scheduled.
Awesome. And if people want to, like we have, use you to make their ads and to benefit from both you and then John Rogers, we had on the show a couple weeks ago, who is a great pollster and media partner with you. How can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd encourage you to visit our website at torchlightstrategies.com. That's the company that John Rogers and I have for all things political. And we would welcome anybody to get in touch with us, and we'd be happy to talk to you.
Excellent. Well, Jason, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. We hope you have all the success in the world with the documentary, and look forward to talking with you soon.
Thanks for having me on, Dustin and Sean. Good talking with you.
Right, thank you.
Jason. Thank you.
All right, that was wonderful. It was great seeing Jason and learning more about the documentary, and I'm looking forward to watching it tonight. I already have it DVR'd so that my wife can see it when she gets back from a work trip, and we're excited to check that out. And I think people will have gotten a lot from that interview. And not only did we learn about the bad decisions of Joe Biden, but we also learned about how the filmmaking process works. We learned a little bit about creating TV ads and the like.
Yeah, I thought it was a great interview. Really enjoyed getting to know a little bit more about Jason and Joe Biden. And was really enjoyed that. And got a private chat while we were in on the show there from Katie Witt, who we've all worked with. So thanks, Katie, for watching and the kind words and for enjoying the interview. Anyway, just wanted to thank for that. And
yes, thanks, Katie. And Jason created a great ad for that race as well, and a really great political leader. You know, this is why we're doing this, and we talk about reigniting American patriotism, and Katie is all about that. She's the one who started the fight to preserve freedom and to expand opportunity and to reignite American patriotism, and we really appreciate her leadership. She's taken on a lot of tough issues, and you know what? This is the perfect example. We have a lot of people who've been watching today. We've had a big surge in a number of people watching, and I assume that's because of Jason. And but there's a lot of people out there. They want to be a leader in their community, and Katie's a great example of someone who stepped up and takes on issues and speaks up. And that's something that maybe we'll talk about that a little bit more tomorrow or the next day. I'll just preview it a little bit. But, to be conservative doesn't mean you have to be quiet. Conservative has a certain, as a way of being, there's a certain, you don't really, speak up. You don't really get in people's faces or anything like that. But the truth is, if you are a conservative, you have every right to speak up just as much as anybody else out there. And I would encourage conservatives and Republicans to do like Katie and to speak up, to do like Jason and to speak up, to get out there, to make sure that people know your perspective. That's one of the reasons why liberals in Hollywood and elsewhere, we get to be treated to their points of view all day long. And it's partly because conservatives it's a personal thing. This is what I believe, and I keep it to myself and what have you. But I think in this election, it's important that we as conservatives let people know what we think. We give them our perspective. If you get a call from a pollster, we've had multiple of the pollsters we've had on have said, hey, let them know the truth. I mean, we talked about the hidden Trump voter effect. I don't know that necessarily benefits anybody. I do get the fear. I did a campaign in Massachusetts, not too well, I guess it's been a long time ago, but we saw this effect in the polling. There were people who would not say they would vote for the Republican because they thought the people who were doing the poll were the unions. And if you say you're going to vote for the Republican and it's the unions, then they've got you. It's not going to go well for you, and it's going to become a problem. So I get the fear that people have, but if you're not in that situation, speak up, let people know. I really love it. I think you have and other people have added the Trump-Pence filter for your profile picture on Facebook. I think that's really great. I see this; it's starting to pick up steam. People are getting some bravery, and they're starting to put it out there that this is where they're at. And it's important that other conservatives see that. I was in a seminar during the 2016 election. It was a class, and the class met on Wednesday nights. And so the class was probably split 50-50 Republican, Democrat. And but the next day after the election, you had these liberals getting up, and one lady says, this morning I was in my hot yoga class and I was crying into my mat because Donald Trump was elected. And you had people one after another just out there and just saying their inner thoughts and blah blah blah. And half the room were conservatives, and not a single one of us got up and cheered or anything like that. We all just kind of kept to ourselves, and that's fine. But when it comes to this election, I think it's time for folks to speak up, let people know what you think. Talk to family members. They don't have to agree with you. That's okay. But tell them this is why. This is why I want President Trump, because I want to have a reinvigorated economy. I know that he's the guy who can do that. I want security. I know that he's the one who took out ISIS, and I want him to continue to make our country strong. So speak up. Let people know what you think. I think I think conservatives can really make a difference and give people another perspective. Because right now in this country, you get the media in every different form, and they give you one point of view, and people like Jason, people like Katie, people like the folks who've sent us questions, they definitely they're stepping up, and we all can step up as well.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I think you got to it a little bit when you talked about the point of view, not just of the news, but really everything we get in entertainment does have almost everything has a liberal bent to it. Mm-hmm. But what's happened in the last 4 years is, I think, a real opening for conservative or libertarian-like folks, because liberals have decided no longer to be funny. They've decided to give that up.
It's amazing. You cannot find funny shows. Yeah. You have to watch The Office, or you have to watch some show that went off the air 10 years ago.
And then, by the way, if there is something that actually is funny, like Last Man Standing with Tim Allen, which does have at least both points of view on it,
It gets moved to Friday night at whatever.
Yeah, it gets canceled from one network, and then another network's like, "Oh, wait a minute, we like ratings and ad dollars and whatnot." So so really being able to, I think there's a real opening to the question we had earlier for more programming like that. Because it's interesting. We talk about news being a ratings game.
Yep.
Ratings still matter on broadcast, and they're going to need to get back to it.
Yep. It's absolutely it's all about ratings, and I call it big media. I love that the president took the fake news moniker and put it back on the media, and they're the ones who created that term, by the way. Yep. But they pointed the gun at him, and he took the gun out of their hands and pointed it right back. And it is amazing he's done that because it's given people a little bit of a better sense of what reality is, and it's opened up a whole nother perspective. And it's the most important thing is no matter what you are hearing, whether it's us, it's the media, anybody, you're hearing a perspective. No matter what, it's a point of view. And you should just start from that place, that no matter whatever people are giving you, whether it's Walter Cronkite 40 years ago, that was a perspective. Now, maybe it was a more fair perspective. I don't know, but it was a perspective. It wasn't the truth. It was just somebody's perspective. So first, get that there's not necessarily any of this is true. It is just a bunch of people's perspectives. And by people speaking up and giving your perspective, maybe people can see things from a few different perspectives, and that will give them a little bit more of maybe a better understanding. It's partly why you see so much cognitive dissonance amongst liberals, because you say something to them and it's never, ever even shown up in their world that people think that way. It is really remarkable. Their cell phone tells them one thing. The algorithm gives them what they want. They watch MSNBC. They watch every Hollywood movie that has that one perspective, and they never see anything. And then Tim Allen gets moved to Friday nights and a different network, and a network that liberals aren't watching anyway. So they just never see it again. It is really remarkable. We have a question from Naomi. Will the program be posted on YouTube? Not too much cable out here in the country. Well, that's a really good question. Based on what we were talking about with Jason, it doesn't sound like it will be. And I don't know if it's going to go on to newsmax.com. However, I would recommend, this is something everybody should do. One, I think Newsmax is a better news network than a lot of them. It doesn't have all the production value that Fox News does for their news shows. However, it does have better news coverage, and it is a lot more down the middle. It is surprising. I used to think it was a very conservative network, but when you watch the news segments, they just give you the facts. So first of all, I would say call your cable provider and ask for Newsmax. That is a really good idea. So, Sean, you have pulled up.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if this specifically is going to be on YouTube, but I do know that Newsmax is on YouTube TV. So that is that one place you can go. I do believe there are some services that tend to stream live at that time. So that'd be 9 Eastern. And you can tend to get those as well. But they're everywhere. They're on direct. If you're on DirecTV, it's channel 349. Dish is 216 for those that are out there. But they're on Roku, Apple TV. Really, they're available most every place now.
Yeah. And I'm going to see if I can get this so that people can see it, what it is, where it's available. And you can, when you're watching the replay of this, you can take a look at this. Okay. So here you go. Get Newsmax TV on DirecTV 349, Xfinity 1,115. So that tells you what they think. Dish 216, Spectrum, Cox, Uverse, it's 1220, FiOS 615, CenturyLink 2109, Mediacom 277, and then you said free on Roku, YouTube, Exumo, Pluto, Apple TV, and more. So it is actually much more available than we thought, and that's great. Thank you for looking that up, Sean, and for answering that question. So thank you, everybody, for checking this out and for joining us on this conversation. Oliver wants to let you know, hello, Sean.
Hey, buddy.
So we really do appreciate all the feedback. We got a lot of feedback again today, and we really appreciate that. We're able to get Mike's question in directly for Jason, and I really appreciate that because that was a good question, talking about how we can have more conservative media. We're not trying to have equal. We're not trying to have propaganda. We're just trying to give people another perspective so there's better understanding in the country. And this is part of reigniting American patriotism, is that people actually get what makes this country great. They get why capitalism is great for people to have opportunity. They get why individual freedom that is enshrined in our Constitution provides the rules of the game that allow everybody to have the opportunity to succeed. I mean, this is amazing stuff. This is a great American experiment, and we are in a moment. We've talked about these court packers many times with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is an avowed court packer, and Joe Biden doesn't want you to know where he's at. And he's speaking out of both sides of his mouth. That would shred the Constitution. That is what we have been able to stand on and be able to rely on for almost 250 years. It's amazing that we have that as our legacy, and it's for us to take up the mantle and keep it going. So let's hear about our. Well, go ahead. Do you have something?
To your point about giving folks a different perspective, and that's what we'd like to see, people being able to see both perspectives. You may remember right after the election in 2016 when the media in particular were shocked, like they just could not believe what just happened. And they even said, like, well, what we need to do is get out in the Midwest and see what's going on and learn more about these folks, right? And then, like, there was this renewed thing, and it lasted about 48 hours. And then they said, or what we could do is try to overthrow the Trump administration. And so they went a different way.
We're still working on it.
But just to that point, and I'm glad you asked about our sponsors, because it is another great way to break through whatever might be there for some folks, and especially for swing voters that you need to reach right now in these last few weeks of the election. You can go to grassfire.us. That's where you're going to learn about our canvassing operation. That's where you get to get your message out to folks right at their doorstep, right where they are. Petitioning, signature gathering. This lets you either get your campaign on the ballot or your issue on the ballot with confidence and peace of mind that it's being done and being done well. And I just don't want you to ever be in a situation where you don't have confidence and peace of mind in that situation. Because
unfortunately, most vendors out there, that's the case.
Yeah,
they're barely legal,
and it's there's nothing worse than that feeling. So on that, and then live calling. This is your opportunity to connect with voters on their phone, live voice. Get a real connection with a real person who can get your message across. And then, of course, through 10centtexting.com, what a great way to actually connect with voters and make sure they know that where you stand on the issues, if that's what's needed, or how to vote. So it's either getting out the vote or persuading voters, another great tool to do that.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Sean. I really appreciate that. And thank you to everybody for joining us today. It was great talking with Jason Meath. Be sure to check out on Newsmax tonight, Bad Decisions, the Joe Biden story. And I think you're going to really enjoy that. I'm going to be tuning in myself. Be sure to check out our sponsors. And if you are right now, we're just a few weeks away from the election, and you might be thinking about, maybe I want to run for office. If you're interested in running for office, reach out to me and Sean. You can reach out to me at Dustin Olson on Twitter, or Sean is at Sean_Bartley, and reach out to us, or you can go to our website, olsonstrategies.com. We specialize in helping people who want to be a political leader in their community to be able to maximize their ability to have that power and influence in their community to take on whatever it is that they see needs to be taken on. And we can help you get elected. So do check that out. And we just thank you for being here today. And join us tomorrow. We'll be here again roughly around 11 a.m. We do have an election in 3 weeks. So it does take something to do this every day, but we really do enjoy it. We really enjoy all the feedback from everybody that we get. It is really awesome to hear from everybody. And this is making a difference for folks, and we really appreciate that, because we're here to explore what it is to be a political leader and to reignite American patriotism, and we appreciate your partnership in that. If you're listening on podcasting platforms, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, please do leave a review and a rating. That really makes a difference, and send us any comments that you have. But thank you, Sean, and thank you, everybody. And we will see you next time on Political Trade Secrets.
Join us next time by subscribing on iTunes, and get show notes and sign up for our newsletter at politicaltradesecrets.com.